As crazy as it sounds, people, one more week until the start of the PGCBL season. Sox open up in Geneva, and then the following night, back in Murnane against the Auburn Double Days. And with the season just that much closer, only fitting that this week's episode is a season preview as we fill you in on what to expect out of this Blue Sox teams, names to get familiar with, and so much more. And joining me for this week's episode, it's your broadcast team for this year, Jack Squared, Jack Angelucci, second year with the club and first year donning the Blue Sox in the broadcast booth, Jack Gordon. Jack, other Jack, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Looking forward to work with Jack for this whole season. Going to be fun. Hopefully some Blue Sox wins to be had. Hopefully a lot of them at Murnane this year. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully we don't get too confused with the names saying, hey, Jack, thanks, Jack. Okay, Jack.
We need to, I don't know. We need to come up with something, man.
We need nicknames. That's what we need to figure out.
You have a nickname that you go by?
Not really. Some people, my name's Jack Gordon. Some people call me like Gordo or Gordy.
I kind of like JG.
I get JG too. I get that sometimes.
Dude, I might go with that. I'm gonna be honest with you, just to keep it. I think we need something. We need something going. You know what I mean? Well, we'll talk about it behind closed doors.
Oh yeah.
I mean, hey, you got a week to figure it out. You got plenty of time. But to the matters at hand, I mean, we got a week until the season starts. Guys are gonna be coming in this weekend. So in terms of let's talk about the guys that are kind of already here. Dewey obviously is still around. His team went to the Division II tournament from Lemoyne. And over on the D3 side, Ryan Enos and Oswego, they're in the Super Regional this weekend against Marietta College out in Ohio. I mean, let's just knock those guys out first. I mean, third-year guys, Jack, you saw a lot of them last year. You know, how important is their presence going to be for the guys that are joining for the first time?
Yeah, I think that, the most important part or important role those guys can play is kind of helping, some of these new guys get acclimated to their surrounds here in Utica. Obviously, they're local, so they're going to give them all the good tips on the restaurants, the good food in the area. But beyond that, just getting them in the whole rhythm of playing in the PGCBL, what to expect from day to day. Obviously, they both have been through the ringer these last couple of years with the club. And I think that that's kind of their main role. Then obviously on the field, we've come to expect, great things from both these guys. Ryan's had a great year at Oswego. Obviously, teams had a great year as well. And best of luck to them against Marietta. But he's had an unbelievable year. Dewey, was battling some injuries early in the season with Lemoyne, but he's always been, a shining star here in Utica. And I think that the biggest thing for those guys is, getting in here, setting the tempo, the message to the club. This is how we do things. Back-to-back division champions, just kind of getting that message out, how we operate here and where to go from there. That's kind of their main role. Then on the field, just keep doing what you're doing, really.
Yeah, I think the impact these guys are going to have is outrageous off the field. Like, they're going to help these guys get acclimated to the area, like you said. But on the field, they're going to be studs. I mean, Ryan Enos right now is leading his league in hitting, batting over 400. Like, I think we can expect huge production out of them on the field. And Dewey Roden, we see he can pitch and hit. He's pitched to sub-3 ERA before. I can see him definitely doing that again and being a big impact bat in the lineup.
So, the unfortunate thing is, if the recovery process was quicker from Tommy John back in September, we would have gotten some innings out of Dewey Roden. And with the way he was striking out hitters, he could have set the all-time strikeouts record, but I think a big difference, now that he won't be as dependent on, or not even dependent on this case, at being a pitcher, I think he had his highest average as a hitter in 2019 when he only threw like 5 innings as a pitcher. So, now that he won't have to worry about pitching, Jack, do you see him getting back to that over 300 hitting mark like he was in 19?
Yeah, obviously, being a dual threat like that, being able to pitch and also play the field obviously helps your team out in a lot of nights. But I think the mindset of kind of being able to focus on one thing more than the other can definitely free up a player. And we saw that with him in 2019, kind of taking more of a role as a hitter first rather than being on the bump. But I think that you can expect that, Tim. I think it's a good prediction to say that, maybe the hitting will free up a little bit for him this season with him not expected to get as much time pitching.
So on the hitting side now, I definitely want to go to get JG over here. I mean, let's talk about the infield. I mean, we already touched on Dewey and Rhino, but you got a lot of other guys who know how to hit the hell out of the baseball. Edwin Taveras at Dewey's position of first base. I mean, he's a big guy who knows how to power the ball out of the ballpark. Shortstop is going to be a very good position. Then the one position that's kind of eluded the Blue Sox in the past, being a strong position, third base, but they got two really solid D1 guys in Daedric Kale and Troy Hamilton. I mean, what's standing out infield-wise for you, JG? I mean, you can talk about some of the guys I mentioned or even ones that I omitted.
I think Daedric Kale is certainly going to be a name to hear this season. Ranked as the #1 third baseman in Arkansas coming out of high school. That is a huge regard. And then Arkansas State this year, his freshman year, he hit 279, very solid, and in 44 games for the team. And don't forget, also an all-state quarterback in high school. Not that that matters for baseball season, but I think he's going to make a huge impact, and the rest of the infield is going to shape itself out too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's my guy in the infield in the research that I've looked at so far, the stuff that I've done. I definitely would say that he's the guy to watch at that hot corner, hopefully to make something happen for the Blue Sox, as you mentioned. Tim, getting kind of some solid production from the third base position is something that this team is going to look for, and it kind of starts with him in the infield as well.
Now, the outfield is a place where the Blue Sox have excelled getting good outfielder after good outfielder. This 2022 outfield might rival any outfield the Sox have had in the past. There are guys out there who can just straight up fly. Chris Fernandez from Felician. I mean, Easton Brenner, Lafayette. I mean, you have a good assortment of talent, D1, D2, D3, JUCO, that can just straight up fly. How important is that going to be just for the style of play that Doug Dillette has these guys play, encouraging them to swipe bags and get themselves in the position to score a lot of runs?
Yeah, Tim, I think we saw that last year. There was some guys in that outfield that could definitely move out there. That come to mind, Scotty O'Brien, Harris Williams were great guys that could swipe some bags and make things happen on the base pass. But when you have such depth in the outfield with such speed, that is something that, you can really rely on to help you kind of maybe squeeze out some more runs that you normally wouldn't get if you didn't have that speed on the base pass. And also with that depth and the amount of guys that can run, they all can't play at once, right? So that lends itself to chances in late innings where guys can come in and pinch run. And once again, with that speed, create some extra runs for this offense.
Yeah, this speed definitely looks like it's probably going to be one of the best groups in the whole league. I mean, with this outfield, you're covering so much ground. Their defense is bound to improve. And in turn, like we talked about before, a pitching staff that hasn't looked great, that's going to help a lot. It's going to help the confidence of the pitchers. They see a fly ball over their head and they're thinking, well, I got the fastest guys in the league behind me. I think it's really going to shape up a whole defense and pitching staff.
And both of you know, I mean, Jack obviously had a full summer to see it for himself. JG, you got to see your name for the first time earlier this week. Yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover, but it's nothing that all of those guys can't handle. I mean, there's a reason why you got to get fast guys to cover that much ground and, prevent some hits and runs from scoring. So, I mean, we know the end game here. We know the end game here in Utica, but we play to our strength. Now, let's talk about behind the plate. The depth last year, it was interesting because you had three solid Division I guys in Angel DiFederico, Garrett Gray, Jeff Nickel, that all split time. And defensively, I mean, DiFederico was a guy who he knew how to throw guys out and take them off the base paths. His teammate now from Valpo, Cade Reinertson, and by the way, I didn't even talk about him. Ryan Maka was National Player of the Week this past week. He went yard 3 times against Bradley for Valpo. So, I mean, Valpo is bringing in some dogs yet again, and one of them, again, Maka, and then Cade Reinertson behind the plate. And then you add in Clark Burrows from Limestone, and then Brandon Durand, a guy who's going to be going to Kentucky, currently in high school. I mean, catching is going to be important. Defense, taking runs off the board by throwing them out and protecting the plate too, and framing also for that matter. I mean, how much can both of you say just on the catching depth and how that's going to help?
I mean, honestly, when you look at this, Tim, as you mentioned, those guys, there's some depth there. Obviously, you don't have the chance to go to Kentucky for nothing. So obviously, that's something you can hang your hat on at the end of the day. And then, the depth of having three guys, two of them with college experience already is something that you can definitely play on. And I think you potentially could be looking at a type of scenario that we saw last year with kind of a revolving door at the catcher position. It's a long summer, not a lot of off days. So having, a trio of guys that can potentially contribute is obviously very big for a team because the last thing you want is to get to the end of July. And if you're relying on one or maybe even two guys, you could have two guys that are worn out. But if you have three guys you can rotate in there on a relatively often basis, you're going to be in a much better position by the time the postseason comes.
Yeah, this group definitely looks pretty solid. I mean, Brandon Duran jumps off the page right away as the D1 Kentucky player. But I really like Clark Burrows, too, at Limestone. He looks like a really good hitter. He was around 300 most of the season, tailed off towards the end because his team wasn't very good. But, behind the plate, you really need that experience, especially for the pitching staff. And Burrows has been around. I mean, he's been in college for 3 years now. Duran is a little bit younger. So I think this is definitely going to be a group that leans on each other a lot to learn from each other throughout the year. Like you said, long summer. So going to be a lot of turns to take. And I think this group looks really solid.
So you bring up that pitching, JG. I mean, around the league, offense was king last year. And, there were some good pitchers, but, you didn't really have, like all around pitching staff who just shut everybody down, didn't give up barely any runs. And Utica fell victim to that too. In order to patch that up this year, it's going to be important for the starting pitching depth to be solid. And it's really the X factor. And I know both of you agree here. It's going to be the bullpen, making sure the guys that start and do well, you got to have the bullpen back them up and finish things off in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I think could have been the Achilles heel of the team last year for the Blue Sox was, that they just didn't seem to really find a solid rhythm within the pitching rotation, within the whole the whole bullpen as well. It was kind of a give and take here. You get a good outing, the next thing you know, you'd be in a 12-11 ball game the next night. But it's something you need to, take some pressure off the bats a little bit. I think last year it was maybe too little too late by the time they found something in terms of, guys to turn to in certain situations. Flayhive was good. Figueroa was good last year. But that was really kind of the end of the season they came along. Might have been a little bit of a too late situation, Tim. And that's something that is tough because, you look at it from a coaching staff perspective, you don't know that much about these guys, right? So they're coming in, and, they kind of come in, everyone's viewed as, all right, equal. First of all, A, the whole point of this league is to get as many reps as possible for guys to get better. B, you're just learning the way guys operate. So I think that's kind of part of the issue is not knowing who to maybe turn to in certain situations. But I think that the quicker that guys can separate themselves in this pitching staff, the better off that the Blue Sox will be.
Yeah, it's going to be huge to have that stable bullpen because when you don't know what's happening in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th innings, your whole team is a little weary, doesn't feel as safe. But that really starts with the starting pitching. I mean, if you can have guys go a little deeper into games, that'll really have the back end sort itself out there. And, there are a lot of new guys joining this staff here. Sam Thompson is a name that jumps out at me, kid from Marshall. He really showed a lot of dominance, and a lot of these arms have, but freshman year of college only let up 2 runs and 7 outings. I mean, that's very solid. I think we're going to have a lot of guys show out this summer.
I mean, when it comes to the summer, there's innings limits, guys get hurt, this is going to be a tough storm to, I mean, that's the same for all the other 15 teams in the league, not just Utica. And when it comes to the schedule, we all know what the beast of the schedule it is. You know, played 50 plus games in the span of 60 or so days. So, Jack, I know you got a lot to talk about with the schedule. I mean, we get to see a lot of new teams that we didn't get to see last year with COVID kind of restricting travel. I mean, what are some opponents that are jumping out on the page for you right now?
Well, so obviously, the team that it seems as if kind of has run this league for the last couple of years, the Amsterdam Mohawks. But as you mentioned, Tim, it's the chance to see a lot of different opponents this year because of the way things are realigned. Travel restrictions have been removed. I think it honestly will be for the better for this team because you kind of got into a flow of seeing the same guys every week. I think it might have hurt this team in the long run. I think last year I should say, but I think this year the freshness of having to get to know opponents more regularly, not just being like, okay, same old deal. We're playing Watertown again. Let's get ready for this or that. And, I think that makes guys excited at least to show up to the ballpark is, having a new opponent on the schedule. The league now is broken into only 2 divisions. So you have to battle your way to the top. But I think this team is going to have a little bit more pep in their step rather than kind of dragging when you get to those dog days of summer and July where you're not seeing a team for the X number time and X number of days like we saw last year. So I think that the ability to have those new opponents on the schedule and kind of see what's going on with that and not, as I mentioned, just not get bored playing the same people every day is really big.
Yeah, I look at this schedule and you see a lot of different teams, right? And before it can kind of get mundane playing the same teams over and over again. And these guys are showing up to their same home ballpark all the time and they love it. But now, I mean, there is some fun into going into somebody else's place, looking to beat them in their own home. And you have that this year with new teams and a new layout. And I also think this team, I know we don't have a lot of returning guys, but I think there's some revenge on the mind. We do want a deep playoff run, and Auburn was the team that took us down last year. So there are plenty of Auburn games. That's who our home opener is against. I look at late June, you get Auburn back-to-back. June 25th, you have them at their place, and then 28th at home. I think that'll be a very interesting set of games and really interested to see how this shakes out.
And Tim, just to, continue on that, I talk about, it's one of those things that I think for the Blue Sox, especially when you look at the schedule, it's great and all. They've had a great regular season success, but getting through and getting yourself in a position where you can succeed in the postseason, that's something this team has kind of struggled with the last couple of years, obviously, and I think that this is kind of the year where we got to see them break through finally in the postseason.
So on the scheduling front, a couple things stand out. Number one, I mean, it always seems like Utica and Elmira, and it stems from the now Utica University and Elmira College rivalry on the ice and just in the Empire 8 in general. And then, and obviously on the diamond, they've been West Division rivals for a long time. They met for the West Division title back in 2016 when the Blue Sox won it and went to the championship series where they lost to Amsterdam. So that's one. And they're going to be the opponent on Autism Acceptance Night in late June. But so I'll give you 2. One, the defending champs from Saugerties come here for a doubleheader right before that Elmira home game for Autism Acceptance Night. So seeing the defending champs and a team that, by the way, Utica was their first ever opponent back in 2015. I was on hand for their inaugural game, and it was against Utica way back in June of 2015. So I just wanted to plug that. And then, so that's a doubleheader June 22nd. The other one, they went out essentially as the PGCBL champs in 2018, the then Jamestown Jammers. They came back this past year now, which, again, I just scratched my head at the name of this, the Jamestown Tarp Skunks. It's just gross. It's just a gross team name. And I at this point, I don't care to rag on them. It's like trying too hard to have a super creative name. I get it. You want to go for the creativity, but you try too hard to do it. But anyways, they won the West Division last year. And I think the way I see it, the West still runs through Jamestown, and it's up to Utica to overtake them. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. Just, as you mentioned, they're the team to beat right now in the West, and that's something that Utica has to come in because of the whole realignment. relatively speaking, after last year, and for lack of a better term, being the new kid on the block in this new realigned division, you obviously the first thing on your mind is to try and knock off the defending champs of the division. So I'd say that having your eyes set on them is definitely something to watch. Bring up an interesting point about Elmira, and then I agree the doubleheader is going to be fun to watch on the 22nd against Socrates. So we'll see what kind of plays out, but I'd say that that's a pretty solid, analysis of this newly minted Western Division.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, Jack. One thing that jumps out at me at this end of the schedule, in late July, you get 4 home games in a row between July 19th and the 25th against Auburn, Mohawk Valley twice, and then Watertown. And then your last 4 games, you go on the road 3 times. But I do like that you're at home for about a week to gear up for that final stand in which you take on some tough teams. So I think it'll be tough, but I do like that rhythm of the schedule.
One thing I'll also add is, last year we didn't get to see Adirondack, and Adirondack in 2019 upset Utica when the Sox were the number 1 seed in the West Division, and Adirondack came in there and beat them soundly. And then they swept Geneva in the West Division final before losing the championship series. They didn't have a team last year, but they're back in the league. I know it's been 3 years, but I know for Enos and Dewey, who were around in 2019, yeah, they're going to want to take that frustration out on them. 3 years building on that. Yeah, especially when you got a hitter-friendly ballpark like you do up in Boonville. Yeah, you're going to want to take it out on them and then some. And it's good to have that additional local rival, not just Mohawk Valley. We saw Watertown a billion times. That got tiring real quick. But Adirondack is only just a straight shot up 12 North, about a half an hour or so. It's good to see that that rivalry come back into the fold.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to, kind of have a trio of local teams here, if you will, now that try and be competitive. And, I think the biggest thing for that, too, in bringing them back is it makes it more fun for the fans at the end of the day, because they like the rivalries, let's be honest, right? And then so do we. And so that adds another aspect to it, another time to, take on another set of rivalry games, if you will. So I think it's big for the fans. I think it helps the players get ready for games when they feel that extra energy in the ballpark when it's a rivalry game. So I think all in all, it's a good thing to have them back.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's another baseball team with more opportunities. Kids getting better over the summer. You love to see the team back in action because it just means more baseball players can play. So yeah, I love it.
So to wrap this up, again, we're a week away, and we didn't even talk about the fact that they open at Geneva, and the Red Wings, they're no slouch. They went to the semifinals of the PGCBL playoffs a year ago. They took Jamestown out at Dietrich Park before falling, I believe, to the Socrates Stallions. So, by the way, the younger brother of 2017 Blue Sox Matt McDermott, Andrew McDermott, is an outfielder for Geneva. So a little former Blue Sox connection with the Red Wings. So I would love to talk about just that. Those first 2 games at Geneva on June 3rd. They did not, I think they lost every time they went to McDonough Park a year ago. So got that revenge aspect there. And then obviously the home opener against Auburn. Storyline wise, what are you liking about those 2 first games of the season?
Well, Tim, I think, first of all, I'm pretty sure you're right that they did lose all those games last year when they traveled up there. And second of all, I think that it's just important to get off to a solid start. I'm not saying it, obviously you want to win the first 2 games, but just avoid a sluggish, ugly start. Even if you're able, you split them, let's say, but it's a close game in both, whatever it is, that's fine. This team got off to a hot start last season. That's going to propel them eventually to narrowly winning a division title last year. It was the hot start they had. And, that's what people don't realize is the fact that, sure, you feel like the games at the end of the schedule matter more, but at the end of the day, a win's a win, a loss is a loss. They all count the same. And when you add them up at the end of the day, that's what it is. So, and with the way the schedule kind of breaks down, there's no time for slow starts. So I think kind of starting off hot and then obviously, finally getting that home game against true home game against Auburn they deserved last year in the playoffs, but unfortunately could not have due to some scheduling issues. That's obviously going to be big for the returners on this team to get a shot at them at Murnane. And obviously is not as big a game as the last one they played against Auburn, but it's going to be nice to try and, get that home opening win.
Yeah, I mean, this season isn't that long. It is, all June, all July, dog days of summer. But I mean, every game counts so much. And if you can set the tone with 2 wins to start your season, that's huge. I mean, that first week or 2 really sets the narrative of who you are as a team. Are you going to go out there, struggle a little bit, try to build up as you go along throughout the season, be the comeback kids kind of thing? Or are you trying to go out there and dominate the whole year? I think the first 2 can really set the tone. And like you said, neither of these teams are slouches. Auburn was a team that went out there and made to the semifinals last year. I mean, it'll be tough, but I do like that they have an opportunity to solidify themselves at the top right away.
And you're 100% right. I mean, you talk about the revenge factor against Auburn, and Jack was 100% right. That game should have been at Murnane, not at Falcon Park, and not with the way things went this past year at Murnane. The Sox were 4-1 against the Double Days at Murnane. And by the way, the last 2 times they outscored them a combined 17-1. So make of that what you will. And they went 1-3, including that loss in the playoffs at Falcon Park. So again, make of that what you will. And not to mention, and again, knocking on wood, the Blue Sox have won 6 consecutive home openers. So just making that clear, knocking on wood, trying to make it 7. And I'm pretty sure they've actually won their season opener itself, pretty sure every year since 2015 as well. So I believe that's a 6. So I'll knock on Blue Sox fans. I'm doing you solid. Knocking on wood here too. So again, hot start is going to be extremely important as well. And by the way, that 5-0 start last year, best start in franchise history as up to date. So, but again, we can talk about it on paper as much as we want, but we actually play the games for real a week from today out in Geneva, starting it off against the Red Wings. And it could be couldn't be more appropriate. Blue versus red. Why not? So that does it. This does it for the preview episode. Guys, thank you again for the time to talk about, key players to look out for, talk about the schedule too, and set the table for what should be another exciting summer of Blue Sox baseball, guys.
Absolutely. Let's get after it. I mean, first year, I'm excited as I can be. Let's go.
Yeah, Tim, we're looking forward to a great year, obviously, and we can talk about it all we want, but all that matters is once you start playing the games, we can talk about all the previews and stuff like that. It's always great to kind of, take a deeper dive into it. But in a week from now, we'll kick it off, and from there it'll be a sprint to the finish. It's not a marathon this season. It's definitely a sprint. So we'll see what happens, and hope you guys can tune in to as many games as possible you can't be at Murnane, and Jack and I will be happy to bring you the action on every occasion.
And by the way, I do want to give you this plug opportunity. Where can we find these Blue Sox broadcasts again? For those of you who might have forgot from last year.
Mixler.com/Utica Blue Sox. That is linked pretty much everywhere you can go to find Blue Sox stuff on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, website. And we'll have, our usual game day posts will go up on game days with the link as well in there. So hope to see you on the Blue Sox Radio Network, and we're looking forward to a fun year.
So that's going to do it for Jack Squared, your 2022 Blue Sox broadcast team. Jack Angelucci, Jack Gordon. I'm Tim Best, your PA announcer, signing off for this week's edition of the Soxcast. Thanks for tuning in. The next episode, we're going to actually be playing some ball. We can't wait to see you all then. Have a good Memorial Day weekend, Blue Sox Nation.